6 years ago, I got pregnant out of wedlock and married Jason Lang. For many years, he treated me as if I were invisible. At my deaf and mute father's funeral, I tearfully begged him to pick up our child just this once. But Jason spent the whole night taking care of his female secretary, who had a minor cold. Because of this, our child was kidnapped. He finally panicked and told me he regretted it. But it was too late. Chapter 1. On the 7th night after my father's death, the police finally rescued my son and me. The Lang family, seeing my son unharmed, thanked the heavens. Only after everyone breathed a sigh of relief did they spare me a glance. So dirty and smelly. They belatedly covered their noses and mouths, moving away from me, covered in blood and surrounded by flies. My son cried and leapt into his grandparents' arms. Bad mommy forced me to eat bugs. The Lang family was shocked, casting accusatory looks at me. Grandfather, with his old, stern face and piercing eyes, looked at me like a sharp knife. How dare you treat a Lang family child like this? I couldn't remember how many times I had heard this. On reflex, I bent down, instinctively wanting to apologize for being a careless mother who couldn't properly care for her child, but it hurt so much. My body felt like a pile of broken metal, barely held together, and even speaking made me dizzy and sweaty. They weren't bugs, they were from the wooden cracks. Yes, they were big, white, disgusting bugs. Boo-hoo! My son continued to cry and fuss, ignoring everything. I shivered, staring blankly at my ugly thumb, which had lost its nail from digging at the wood. I didn't blame my son. Children don't understand life and death. In extreme conditions, many people would eat anything to survive, even dirt. All right, stop crying. Our poor little Lang Jing, bad mommy bullies you when daddy's not around. The old servant who had raised my son from a young age held him lovingly. The Lang family surrounded the child, comforting him. Only when I timidly asked them, "Is Jason home?" Jason Lang, my husband. The day our son was kidnapped, he was supposed to pick him up. But he didn't show up because his secretary had a cold that afternoon. When I received the ransom call, panicked and helpless, I couldn't reach him. When I risked my life and became a prisoner, the kidnappers beat and cursed me. They said Jason only wanted to ransom the child. I, the mother, was just a burden. They complained about the effort they wasted bringing me along. Having escaped a great disaster, I just wanted to ask Jason one question. Did he really, as the kidnappers said, only want to ransom the child? Zhao Jing! Are you all right? A young woman in hospital clothes ran out of the Lang family gate barefoot. Her name was Jessica Chang, Jason's secretary. At the sight of her, my son's barely stopped crying resumed pitifully. Sister Jessica. They hugged each other, looking like a real mother and son. Lang's grandparents looked on with satisfaction, reminding Jessica, "You've just recovered from a serious illness. Don't run so fast. And you're an adult now, how can you go out without shoes like a child?" As the elders finished speaking, I saw Jason approaching. The handsome man was carrying a pair of cartoon pink slippers. The cleanliness-obsessed Jason personally put the slippers on Jessica. Then he took off his coat and wrapped it around her and my son. Finally, Jason's dark eyes fell on me. His brows twitched slightly, his face stern. "Why are you just standing there?" I knew he found me too dirty and smelly, embarrassed to be seen with me. Realizing this, I started laughing hysterically. Laughing so hard that tears and snot flowed uncontrollably. Laughing so hard that everyone looked at me like I was crazy, their eyes filled with fear and wariness. With no dignity left, I wiped my tears and snot with my filthy clothes, stammering an explanation to everyone. Sorry, I just thought of a really funny joke. I, Grace Shen, am the biggest joke in the world. I wouldn't ask Jason why he wouldn't pay enough ransom to save me. The answer was so obvious, why bother humiliating myself? Seeing everyone avoiding me like the plague, I shamelessly clung to Jason's sleeve as I headed towards the Lang Mansion's gate. Chapter 2. I softly pleaded with him. "Jason, today is my father's 7-day memorial. I don't have a car. Can you take me there? Grandmother turned back, clearly wanting me to stop causing trouble. It's so late, Grace. Since you married into the Lang family, you should. But Jason didn't let her finish. He grabbed my arm and dragged me to the car. Through the car window, I didn't miss Jessica's seemingly calm yet resentful glance. I smiled bitterly. Don't worry, after tonight, this man will be yours. No, Jason was never mine. How shameless of me. At the funeral hall, my sister saw me and walked over with a smile, slapping me across the face. The burning pain on my cheek brought unprecedented clarity. How dare you show your face here? Where have you been these 7 days? Do you think dressing like a beggar will make Dad forgive you? I had stayed for less than half an hour on the first day of my father's funeral, leaving without explanation to pick up my child. Now, I still had no explanation, only kneeling down and telling my sister. Don't worry, Dad won't forgive me, and I will never forgive myself. My father was a deaf-mute man. My sister and I were abandoned babies he found under a bridge. Growing up, I never saw him smile. A short deaf-mute man raising two ignorant daughters. If he didn't mix anger with pain on his face, anyone could step on us and spit in our faces. As a child, I hated my father. He only collected trash and fought with street thugs. He forced my sister and me to pick up classmates' discarded clothes and torn bags. Whenever he drank, he'd point at my test scores, ranting incoherently. For every point I missed, he'd hit my palm that many times. No exaggeration, I once wished he'd disappear from this world. Later, I studied hard abroad on a scholarship and met Jason. We fell in love, lived together, and unexpectedly had a child. Jason didn't care about our vastly different backgrounds, he only had one request. To be a dignified Mrs. Lang in public. So I didn't invite my father to my wedding. After the wedding, my father never visited the Lang family until he died a week ago. Despite my efforts, the Lang family was never satisfied with me. At first, Jason protected and loved me. Later, he pretended to be indifferent but secretly comforted me. Now, I looked at Jason's expressionless face with red eyes. As husband and wife, I have one last request, light an incense stick for my father. Jason coldly asked. What do you mean by that? Before I could answer, two coughs broke the silence in the funeral hall. Jessica brought a sleepy Lang Jing. Miss Shen, I thought that even though you're not your father's biological daughter, he's still Zhao Jing's nominal grandfather, so I brought Zhao Jing here. She paused, then timidly asked Jason. Did I come at a bad time? Jason's cold expression instantly softened. He shook his head and walked over. The image of them standing together looked like a family of three, even my sister couldn't help but look at me with pity. I tried to remain calm, but my throat tightened, and I couldn't help but cough violently. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Jason take a step towards me, but when Jessica turned and frowned, looking like she was about to vomit, he chose her. Are you feeling unwell again? There's too much incense ash here, I'll take you outside. Lang Jing pouted. Daddy, I don't like it here either. The man in the photo looks ugly and scary. Last time, he kept following me and sister Jessica, making weird noises. Jessica covered my son's mouth, glancing at me with a frozen expression. I was stunned for a few seconds, then rushed to my son, shaking him desperately. Zhao Jing, tell mommy, what did Grandpa say to you? Did he come looking for mommy? Chapter 3. Why didn't you tell me? My father never sought me out, he must have been in trouble when he... Suddenly, Jason pushed me away harshly, and I fell to the ground. Seeing Lang Jing crying out of fear, he angrily scolded. Grace, don't go crazy at the child. My name isn't Grace. What? The name my father gave me. I said, dazed and tearful. Is Grace happy, Shen? When my sister was taken in, my father impatiently signed. Since you're called Happy, this sister we picked up will be called Joy. I silently objected, giving no response. I thought it too perfunctory. I thought my name too rustic. On my first day as an adult, I secretly changed my legal name to Grace Shen. Only now did I realize my father just wanted me to be happy. For some reason, I couldn't stop crying. My sister hugged me. Just like when we were kids, she buried her face in my arms and sobbed. "Sis, Dad wouldn't let me find you, but he looked at our childhood photos every day. He even made toys for your child." Toys? I recalled the clumsy wooden sword that Ling Jing and Jessica disdainfully threw into the trash. At the time, I wondered why Jessica looked at me like that. I shakily stood up, wiped my tears, and walked towards Jessica and Ling Jing. "Give me my father's things." My voice was weak, my eyes bloodshot, repeating the demand. I knew the wooden sword was gone. Just like the stubborn old man who only glared and scolded me, who pushed me to study but couldn't even write basic arithmetic. When Jessica let out a soft whimper, a sharp slap hit me, and my head snapped to the side. The sharp ringing in my ears hurt my nerves, and I lost hearing in my left ear for several seconds. Jason protected Jessica, towering over me. "Is Ling Jing really your son? Look at yourself, not an ounce of maternal demeanor." I trembled and asked him. "And you? Jason, do you think you've done well?" This was my first time arguing with Jason since our marriage. Seeing his face darken, I knew he couldn't tolerate my defiance. Some decisions take only seconds to make. I smiled sadly and asked Ling Jing. "Zhao Jing, Mommy and Daddy are getting a divorce. Who do you want to stay with?" Without hesitation, Ling Jing clung to Jessica, glaring at me warily. "I don't want a useless mom like you. Go away." The Ling family never saw me as human. Ling Jing, influenced by them over the years, no longer recognized me as his mother. Even though I expected this answer, it still left a bitter taste in my mouth and a deep ache in my heart. Unexpectedly, Jason seemed slightly angry. "Ling Jing, where are your manners? Apologize immediately." "No need." I met Jason's gaze. "I don't want you or our son." With that, I walked towards the door. But Jason rushed over, grabbing my hand, his face cold, eyes dark as the sea. "Where do you think you're going? And who gave you permission to mention divorce?" Chapter 4. With a heart of ashes, my gaze was exceptionally calm. "Let go." Jason was about to say something when Jessica conveniently clutched her chest and collapsed. As expected, Jason's heart and eyes were once again filled with her. He pushed me aside, rushing to support the frail Jessica. At this moment, I no longer cared to look at them even for a second. My sister kindly drove me back to the Lang family mansion. I asked her to wait outside while I went in to quickly pack my belongings. In the large living room, Lang's grandmother saw me dragging a suitcase and smiled mockingly. "Grace, we elders don't like to meddle, but you're already a mother. How can you still act like a naive girl, running away from home at the slightest dissatisfaction?" Lang's grandfather snorted, unmoving in his grand wooden chair. "Let her go. She'll come crawling back in a few days." For the first time, I interrupted the elder. "Don't worry, I will never come back." As soon as I said this, Jason walked in, holding our son. He clearly heard my words. For the first time, his naturally stern face showed a heavy expression. "Grace, you can leave, but let me tell you, this isn't a place you can come and go as you please." Understanding his implied meaning, I just smiled. "I know." Just as I was about to step out of the house, I paused. Seeing this, Jason's cold expression softened slightly. He whispered to our sleepy son, then put him down. As Ling Jing stumbled towards me, about to hug my leg, following his father's instructions to appease me, I stepped back. No longer did I pat Ling Jing's fluffy head as I used to. I said, "By the way, Jason, I've already booked an appointment at the Civil Affairs Bureau for our divorce application. It's next Monday at p.m. After a pause, I continued. "As for the property division, my request is simple: split the family assets equally. As for your company shares, you can give them if you want. If not, I won't fight for them." Hearing about the property division, Leng's grandparents exchanged incredulous glances. They finally realized I was serious. But in this cold, empty mansion, only one person ignored my words, assuming I was just throwing a tantrum. "Fine. Grace, if you leave, don't come back." Leng Jing was too young. Raised by the Leng family, he had learned to despise me and not care about me. But the bond between mother and child is strong. His innocent eyes blinked between his father and me, tears welling up until he finally burst into tears. I wanted to hug him, but reason stopped me. "Leng Jing, Mommy will visit you in the future." With that, I quickly left. My sister took me to her small apartment. That night, we cried in each other's arms. I owed her and our father so much. I used to think that once my child grew up, I'd have the time and confidence to repay them. But now I realize that the saying, "A child wants to care for their parents, but they are no longer there," is just a pathetic excuse made by foolish, selfish adults. After handling our father's funeral, the day of my divorce appointment with Jason arrived. That day, I waited at the Civil Affairs Bureau all afternoon, but he never showed up. Chapter 5. With no other choice, I hired a lawyer and sent him a divorce agreement. On the day the divorce papers were delivered, a maid from the Leng family called, saying Leng Jing was sick and crying for his mother to come and give him medicine. After hanging up, I hurriedly packed and prepared to go to the Leng family. My sister, who had come home for lunch, stopped me. "Are you sure you want to go? I think this is just a ploy to get you back. Have you forgotten how the Leng family treated you and Dad?" I paused, involuntarily recalling past events. When I first brought Jason home to meet my family, he never showed any disdain for my background or my father. To marry me, he endured immense pressure from the Leng family. Because of this, I always tried to share his burden. First, by reducing visits to my family. Then, by giving Leng's grandparents full control of our son's upbringing. Later, even when he openly brought Jessica home, I never objected. Enough. It's really enough. Seeing me slump onto the foyer bench, my sister sighed in relief. We exchanged smiles and started discussing dinner plans. The next day, I got up early, did my makeup, and went out full of energy for a job interview. I'm the older sister. I can't just rely on my sister to support us. But my mood was complicated when I saw the familiar black car outside our complex. On the third day, the fourth day, until the fifth day. "Get in, I'll take you." The window of the expensive car lowered slightly. Inside, Jason focused on his phone, speaking without looking at me. I ignored him. Time passed. I received a call from a ride-share driver apologizing for the heavy traffic, saying it would take about 10 minutes to reach me, or I could cancel and book another ride. Not wanting to be late, I booked another ride, but it was far away. "Don't waste time. I have something to discuss. Get in." Faced with his second and final invitation, I sighed and got in the car. The partition between the driver and the back seat slowly closed. Jason put down his phone and pinched his high nose bridge. He looked tired. "Grace, I can give you any amount of money. Stop this farce." I hugged myself, my eyes calm. "Don't get it wrong. We are legally married. I don't need your money, I want what's rightfully mine." Before he could speak, I continued. "No matter what, we are still husband and wife and have a child. An amicable separation is the best outcome." He laughed angrily. "So you remember we have a child. I've never seen a woman as heartless as you, completely giving up custody of her own son." "That's right. The divorce agreement I sent clearly stated that I gave up custody of Leng Jing, asking only for simple visitation rights. In fact, if the Leng family strictly forbade me from seeing him, I wouldn't fight. I know my worth and understand that Leng Jing living with the Leng family is best for everyone." "We're here. I should get out." The car stopped by the roadside. Jason held my hand as I reached for the door handle. "If it's because of Jessica, I can explain." Chapter 6. Jason looked into my eyes, and for the second time, since his proposal, I saw an unmistakable plea in the eyes of this favored son of heaven. It's not what you think between her and me. What did I think? Honestly, I had made countless assumptions and had endless suspicions and fantasies. How many sleepless nights had I spent alone? 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, at this point, it really didn't matter anymore. I curved my lips slightly. Jason, there's no need to explain. You have always been free. Without me, you'll only be freer. I shook off Jason's hand, got out of the car, and walked away briskly. A month later, Jessica found me at the piano studio where I worked part-time. To avoid disturbing the children's lessons, I followed her to a nearby cafe. Grace, I'm pregnant. The woman cut straight to the point, placing a hospital checkup sheet in front of me. I didn't bother to look closely, just curious about what she wanted. So, stop clinging to Jason. Hurry up and get a divorce. I blinked. Are you mistaken? When had I ever clung to Jason? I had sent countless divorce agreements, and my hired lawyer had always been turned away. Just 2 days ago, Jason inexplicably sent me a company stock transfer agreement. I wouldn't mistake something as significant as pregnancy. Jessica clearly misunderstood, her eyes full of provocation and impatience. Grace, don't think your pitiful act can win Jason's heart back. Let me tell you, it was me who told him not to pick up your call when you were kidnapped. Now, do you understand your place in his heart? If Jessica hadn't mentioned it, I might have forgotten this minor detail of the kidnapping incident. Yes, as a husband, Jason indeed owed me. I hadn't planned on accepting his company shares. But now, considering that Jason chose to atone with money, why should I refuse? No matter how flawed the man I once chose was, the money he earned for the family was always without fault. Sincerely, I pursed my lips at the inadvertently enlightening Jessica, then picked up my half-finished juice and splashed it on her, laughing. Good thing I survived. Otherwise, even as a ghost, I wouldn't spare you, you jealous fool who can't live without a man. Jessica, with her eyes and nose full of juice, gasped, her eyes nearly popping out. Several cafe patrons glanced at us curiously. I was about to leave when Jessica grabbed me, screaming and trying to attack. Luckily, a handsome man walked over from the corner, blocking her attack. Lawyer Zhu, sorry to make you witness this. 5 minutes earlier, following my location, my junior and lawyer, Michael Zhu, had entered the cafe and taken a seat. He had planned to wait for Jessica to leave before discussing the case with me, but plans never keep up with changes, and no one expected her to go mad and attack me. Seeing Michael, Jessica quickly calmed down, scrutinizing us before sneering. An old woman like you has the nerve to keep a young gigolo. Before I could retort, Michael chuckled calmly. I am serious about Miss Shen. Besides, if you continue to slander us, I will sue you until you have nothing left. Jessica didn't know Michael, but she could sense the aura of a high-class person. She dared not provoke Michael, glaring at me with fiery eyes. Grace, I'll let you off today. Remember what I said, don't bother me and Jason again. He's mine. After Jessica left, I thanked Michael, not only for his help just now but also for his efforts in my divorce case. However, he looked at me frankly. Senior, I have my own selfish motives. Hearing this, I changed the subject, beginning to discuss my divorce case with him. Michael and I agreed that dragging things out wasn't a solution. It was time for me to personally deliver an ultimatum to Jason. Conveniently, Leng Jing's birthday was in 2 days, so that evening, I brought a gift and my lawyer to the lively Leng family. Jason opened the door for me personally. I hadn't seen him so visibly happy in a long time. However, the moment he saw Michael, who arrived late due to parking, his smile vanished without a trace. What's he doing here? Hearing Jason's cold question, I suddenly recalled a similar query I had when Jessica first entered our bedroom without notice. How did Jason respond back then? Oh, I remember. I smiled gently, speaking in a volume only he and I could hear. He's my friend. You're the host, he's the guest. Don't wear that stern face and let the guest laugh at us, okay? With that, I led Michael past him, walking towards my son. In the large living room, the Lang family and Jessica were chatting and laughing. My presence felt like a sudden winter, quickly silencing the room. Lang Jing, surrounded by them, ran towards me, surprisingly throwing himself into my arms. Mommy, you're finally back. At first, I thought Lang Jing's clinginess was coached by Jason, but soon after, when I realized that even when I went to the bathroom, Lang Jing insisted on following me. And when Jessica and the old servant responsible for caring for him both looked odd, urging Lang Jing to let go of me and play with the other kids, I pushed away Jessica's hand and took my son back to his room. Once inside, Lang Jing started crying. He clung to me tightly. Through his sobs, I had a foreboding feeling and checked his body. Chapter 7. Sure enough, I saw what I least wanted to see: hidden marks of abuse. Mommy, please sleep with me from now on, I beg you. Lang Jing told me that since I left, Jessica had started abusing him under the pretext of telling bedtime stories. He didn't dare tell his father or grandparents because Jessica always smiled and told him, "Disobedient children will be thrown out like your mommy into the trash." I forced myself to stay calm, comforting him that his parents would never abandon him, then led him back to the living room and handed him to Michael. After doing this, I grabbed the knife used to cut the birthday cake and walked up to the woman chatting with Lang's grandparents, tapping her on the shoulder. Then, I slashed her face. "Jessica, you beast!" The incident happened so suddenly that for a few seconds, everyone was too stunned to react. Even Jessica just stared at me blankly until she touched her face and saw the blood. Ah! Ignoring her painful screams, Jason grabbed the knife from me, pinning me against a pillar, and asked in a low voice, "What happened?" Without getting an answer, he guessed, "Take our son back to his room. I'll handle the rest." What a joke! Since when did my affairs become his to handle? When I pushed Jason away, the Lang family scolded me for being crazy. I looked at Jessica, protected by Lang's grandmother, crying with her face covered, and sneered. "You two old fools are truly blind. Open your eyes and look at the injuries on Lang Jing." Although Michael didn't know the full story, hearing this, he immediately asked Lang Jing, "Can you show Uncle where it hurts?" With Lang Jing's consent, Michael helped me show everyone the evidence of the child's abuse. Seeing the bruises, the Lang family, including Jason, were all stunned. Jason looked at Jessica with a terrifying glint in his eye. At that moment, he wanted to kill her more than I did. "It's not true, I didn't do it. Jason, you treat me so well, how could I hurt your son?" Jessica tried to get the old servant, who had conspired with her, to lie, but as soon as the servant saw Jason's sharp gaze, she crumbled, desperately distancing herself. The marks on Zhao Jing were all caused by this bad woman. Mr. Lang, I was heartbroken too, but she threatened me if I spoke out. Enough! Jason wouldn't accept any excuses. He pointed to the door, telling Jessica to get out. "From now on, the Lang family owes you nothing." Jessica wept bitterly, shaking her head desperately. "No, you love me so much, you wouldn't bear to let me go." She knelt before Lang's grandfather, begging forgiveness for her mistake, hoping he would remember her father's sacrifice in saving his son and forgive her. Hearing this, I finally understood why the Lang family treated her so well. When Jason and I first started dating, he told me about his father almost freezing to death in the mountains while doing business, saved only by a good-hearted man willing to risk his life. Jason tightly gripped my hand without invitation, coldly telling Jessica, "The woman I love has always been my wife. If you don't leave, don't blame me for being ruthless." Ignoring Michael's angry gaze, I struggled free from Jason. "Jason, I came today to deliver the divorce papers. If it weren't for discovering Jessica's abuse of Lang Jing, I would have delivered the papers and left by now." Chapter 8. Seeing me place a document on the coffee table, Jessica, as if grasping at her last straw, stopped pretending to cry. She even forgot about the wound on her face, bleeding from her own doing, and crawled to Jason's feet in joy. "Jason, you heard her. She wants to divorce you. She's already found someone new. This promiscuous woman, ah." To everyone's shock, Jason's face darkened, and he stepped on her fingers. As he stood motionless, Jessica began to faint from the pain, and the Lang family panicked. Amid the chaos, I signaled Michael, ready to leave with him. But Jason, ignoring Jessica, picked up Lang Jing and blocked my way. "Your son has been hurt so badly, and you just leave? Mommy, hug me." Father and son played their parts well. Lang Jing leaned forward, almost wrapping his arms around my neck, but Michael quickly stepped in, blocking me. "Mr. Lang, my client wants me to tell you that avoiding the issue won't stop it from progressing. Please set a good example for your child and let her go." Jason stared at me. "Grace, stay tonight. We need to talk." I remained expressionless. "There's nothing to discuss. If you won't sign, we'll go to court. If one suit doesn't work, I'll file again. 1 year, 2 years, however long it takes, until the judge grants the divorce." My resolute attitude left the Lang family exchanging glances. Who could have imagined that the kindest, lowest status housewife in the family would one day stand up to her noble husband and demand a divorce? I was also somewhat surprised at my seemingly cold-blooded demeanor. Maybe I didn't fully understand what I wanted, but I knew one thing. I didn't want to be Jason's wife anymore. Even Jason didn't realize his voice trembled uncontrollably when he spoke. "I know I've done many wrong things. I've been too busy with work, neglecting you for too long. I'll make it up to you. Please, don't leave, okay?" I couldn't remember the last time I heard him call me that. My heart tightened, feeling as if an invisible hand had twisted my insides. Sensing the fragile atmosphere between his parents, Lang Jing started crying inexplicably. Listening to the heart-wrenching cries of the child I once risked my life to give birth to, who no one could comfort, a tear slipped down my cheek. Finally, I gave Jason a heartfelt smile. "Jason, signing the divorce papers is the best way to make it up to me." Jason's face turned as pale as paper. I stood there for a moment. He still refused to accept reality and sign the papers. So, I left. Sitting in Michael's car, we didn't speak for about half an hour. As we neared my apartment complex, Michael spoke. "Grace, you know I liked you back in school, right?" I nodded. Michael smiled. "Back then, you were already with Jason. But the fun part about life is that until the very end, nothing is set in stone." Not wanting to beat around the bush, I said. "True, but I don't have the energy for a relationship right now." The car stopped, and Michael turned to me, smiling gently. "All you have to do is enjoy being cared for and pursued by me." I sat quietly for a moment, unbuckled my seatbelt. "As long as you're happy." At the moment, I didn't have many romantic feelings for Michael. But human nature is flawed. Who wouldn't like being pursued by a successful, handsome man without any expectations? Especially someone like me, a woman worn down by years of a hopeless marriage. After that day, Michael pursued me as he promised. His thoughtful gestures, flowers, gifts, and cooking for me never felt burdensome, nor did they allow me to forget him while I focused on my studies and part-time jobs. Gradually, my life became filled with family, work, studies, and a junior who had liked me for years. I felt genuinely happier and more at peace. 3 months after Lang Jing's birthday, I received another call from Jason. This time, it was Lang's grandmother, humbly pleading for me to visit the hospital. Jason was ill. Chapter 9. I told her I wasn't a doctor, and besides, we were separated. Before I could finish, the voice on the other end changed to the one I knew best. He sounded weak but firm. "Sorry to bother you, Grace." The call ended. I was dazed for a moment, but soon forgot about it when my sister came home with a feast of delicious dishes. A few days later, I saw Lang Jing and Lang's grandfather downstairs in my complex. I took Lang Jing out for a meal. As he happily ate, he asked, Mommy, do you really not want me anymore? I also enjoyed the meal. Mommy and Daddy are separating. Living with Daddy is best for both of us. Mommy loves you very much and will take you out for treats whenever possible, just like today. Satisfied with the fried food, Ling Jing, happy as ever, said, Okay. Pinky promise. After the meal, I discreetly took Ling Jing to the hospital. He remembered his father's room number as instructed by his grandfather. In the spacious private room, Jason was working diligently with one hand while the other had in for drip. After the new nanny took Ling Jing out, Jason said, I've dealt with Jessica. She won't appear again. Jason knew some shady friends who were very good at handling problems for money. Thinking of Jessica's fate, I touched my neck, feeling a chill, but said nothing. And the kidnappers who hurt you and our son. With that, I lowered my head, ignoring the flash of cruelty in his eyes, and asked, Have you read the agreement? If there are any changes needed, we can discuss them now. Upon hearing this, he casually removed the 4-needle, took the divorce agreement from under his pillow, and walked over barefoot, holding the papers in front of me. I've signed it. Seeing his bloodied hand, I closed my eyes, reopened them, and smiled, taking the papers. Thank you. Before I could see the final signature, he snatched it back and tore it to pieces. His change of heart made me slap him. His eyes were bloodshot, his pale lips trembling. Don't leave me. Please, I may not have much time left. This is my last wish. Grace, I never realized how much I love you. But I replied, I don't love you anymore. Jason, I have new goals and aspirations. You are no longer part of my life plan. My honest words resulted in him coughing up rusty blood, staining my clothes. Calmly, I pressed the call button for the nurse. Jason fell into a coma. Fortunately, his vitals were stable. The doctor subtly blamed me, saying a patient with late-stage cirrhosis couldn't handle emotional disturbances. How could family members? I interrupted her coolly. Sorry. I'm just his ex-wife. You'll have to discuss his condition with his family. After leaving the hospital, I received great news. One of the many work-study applications I sent out was accepted by an overseas lab in need of staff. 2 months later, I received the court's divorce decree and boarded a flight abroad. What a coincidence. Do you think it's fate? On the plane, I found Michael, who had claimed he couldn't see me off due to a business trip, sitting next to me. I laughed. Trying to scare someone? I wouldn't dare scare you. Michael removed a stray thread from my collar. Feeling my cheeks warm, a reaction that was rare in our previous interactions. The plane taxied in the drizzle and took off. Through the window, I watched the scenery rapidly disappear, closing my eyes. When I woke up, looking out the window, there was nothing but sunshine and clouds.